I think I'll start this talk off by asking all you a question, because that's what we do at school. We answer questions all day. So here it is. Have you ever been nervous, and not just in the, I didn't study for docs multiple choice type of way, more in the way of, I don't know about this. Maybe this isn't such a good idea. What if something happens? Then asking yourself that question, maybe you experienced through a quick and minor panic attack and had a brief period of hyperventilation before answering the question, yes or no. That split second, when a million outcomes and consequences are racing through your head, it can be very stressful. But it can all be put to rest by answering the question, yes or no. It's simple. If you say no, and it really doesn't matter the situation you're in, you can carry on same as you started. No harm done or risk taken. But if you say yes, something else, anything else can happen. And just maybe that super unfortunate moment of decision making can culminate into the most important 3 letters you've ever said. Yes. So it's time for a quick story. Some of you may know that I love to travel. It's my favorite thing to do. And my absolute favorite trip was a 3-week-long excursion to Everest Base Camp, deep in the heart of the Himalayas in northeastern Nepal. Being surrounded by those kinds of landscapes was more than just a jaw-dropping experience. That's not what the story's about, though. I could easily go off on a 3-hour-long tangent breaking down the struggles of no internet, freezing temperatures, and a severe lack of oxygen, which I am convinced made me 10 times funnier than I already am. Or just 10 times the amount of brain cells were dying. That's okay. The story starts right after the hike, after we'd taken off from the world's most dangerous airport and landed back in the capital, Kathmandu. Now, if you don't know much about Kathmandu or any other large South Asian city, I wouldn't blame you. Neither did I. So naturally, I would describe my initial feelings as overwhelmed by the sheer amount of people, shocked by the lack of infrastructure, and confused and a little scared by how we hadn't gotten in a car accident yet. And to add insult to injury, this very weekend we were at the capital. One of the largest Hindu festivals was going on, Holi. The festival Holi seemed to put Kathmandu on overdrive, with kids and adults throwing colored powder throughout the streets and parties and festivals popping up all over the city. Now, naturally, the other 3 members of the sophomore squad and I were curious about the city and everything else, so we did the only logical thing: go get ice cream. After we had taken showers for the first time in 2 weeks, of course. But it was at this ice cream parlor where the crucial yes-no moment occurred. 20 minutes in, and multiple brain freezes later, we noticed one of the many party happenings popping up across the street from us. We saw guards taking a couple of rupees and admitting locals into the festival. So we walked over, dodging rickshaws and buses as we crossed the street to get a closer look. As it turned out, this wasn't some small traditional festival gathering, but rather a pretty expansive and hugely loud display of music and colors, and that's only what we could see from the outside. Being as overwhelmed as I was, and knowing nothing about this huge, confusing city or anything about the native language or people, I was pretty skeptical about entering. It just didn't seem like a good idea. I thought we should go walk around or something else. But before I could get any of those words out of my mouth, I was interrupted by a herd of people entering. I think it was one of my friends that could sense my skepticism, and probably because we were riding that emotional high of being on top of the world, literally, he sensed something way more enthusiastic than any sophomore should ever say. All along this trip, we've been saying how this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Wouldn't you regret not taking full advantage of it? It was probably said less nicely and with some colorful language sprinkled in there for good measure, but the point was the same. I had no choice. I had to say yes. Long story short, it was the right decision. After giving a man with an alarmingly full bag of cash some extra rupees, we entered the party. It's hard to explain the rush of being surrounded by 1,000 people singing electronic Bollywood hype music while being covered in multicolored cornstarch. It sounds like a weird thing, and that's because it totally was. But it was also incredible and special, but it almost didn't happen. That split second of decision-making we talked about earlier, before choosing between yes or no, it can really have a big decision. The success story of just one fun time is a singular example in a time of constant decision making. It's said that each person on average makes 35,000 choices a day, and I'm willing to bet it's probably more than that for us students. Well, most of us. You know who you are. But odds are, some of those decisions are much more difficult than saying yes or no to today's lunch. On those rare occasions when saying yes or no means more than extra bacon on your Whataburger, or agreeing to a conspiracy theory when every celebrity is a spy for the government. Those are the times when maybe you should look a little closer into what you're agreeing to. So if we just take a step back and look at my scenario in Nepal, hindsight reveals something interesting. If I would have said no to the question, if I wouldn't have walked into the festival and experienced the excitement that I did, I wouldn't have had as an immersive experience as I did. For the first time on the trip, I was relaxed and totally in the moment. I connected with locals and learned about what real modern Nepal looked like. If I said no, I would have gone back to the hotel being in a state of contentment, which sounds fine, but is fine really fine? If you can imagine yourself in a position where you might not ever get to go back again, you'd be pretty disappointed if you didn't take full advantage of the moment. It's one of my life goals to always go above and beyond my comfort zones whenever I get the chance, to always be open to trying new things. One of my self-proclaimed mottos is to seek discomfort. Now, if that sounds familiar, it's because I stole it from YouTube. But all plagiarism aside, the motto has become a real movement in my life. To me, seeking discomfort doesn't mean purposefully putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, but rather, it means extending your comfort zones, saying yes to things you might have been too scared to try in the first place. That could be anything from your fear of spiders to flying, or just trying a new exotic food you were too disgusted to in the first place. I use this method not just in Nepal, but in other situations as well. For a more recent and close-to-home example, one morning last summer, I got a call from one Sebastian Sotomayor. He wanted to go climbing. I assumed we were just going to go bouldering at a gym downtown or go climbing somewhere else. But when he said over the phone, man, I've been denied by like 5 other people. Just meet me in the back of the Gold's Gym parking lot. I got the bikes. I knew this wasn't quite right. Obviously, at this point, we weren't just going to a bouldering gym. At this point, apparently we were going to a wall, a giant 60-foot limestone rock wall that had been shut down earlier this year because of an unfortunate incident involving climbers. But I had said yes, and I wasn't going to let my fear of falling off a cliff get in my way of becoming a certified savage. After climbing the least sketchy way we know how, and watching Sebastian tie totally untested new climbing ropes onto 2 little hooks drilled directly into the rock wall God knows how long ago, we were ready to rappel. Well, he was. I was ready to sit on a blanket and videotape and watch my friend jump off a cliff. I didn't hear any splats or shrieks as he began his descent, so I assumed everything was going well. And it was. To my excitement and fair amount of surprise, he made it down safely without getting critically injured, physically or emotionally. But I also knew that that meant it was my turn. He climbed back up the rock wall. We fixed the rope so I wouldn't have to free climb the first 8 feet as he had. I put on a harness and a helmet because safety first, and I stepped off. A little more shaking and complaining than we probably would have liked, but I did it. I made it down safely, and I'm so glad I did. Not to just make it through it, but to actually have done it. I put my trust and faith into something I really didn't think I would have going in. I expanded my comfort zones, stretched my limits past what I thought was possible, and something else I learned from this experience is that you have to take what the world gives you. I didn't realize how exciting a Hindu festival could be, and I also didn't realize that just 20 minutes from my house, there was a giant wall just waiting to be climbed. The point of this talk wasn't to make you want to go climb a mountain. I mean, if you did, that's totally awesome and I want to go with you. But it also wasn't meant for you to fall asleep. But this was intended to make you think just a little bit about yourself and about your decisions. So if you walk out of this chapel and your friends ask you to do something after school or just try something new, I think it's as good a time as ever to say yes, because saying yes can lead to beautiful things. Thank you.
come up. It's birthdays today. So birthdays from the time we started school on Convocation Day. If I call your name, please stand up.